When I was younger, my dad wasn't in the picture at all. When he found out my mum was pregnant, he made the decision to not be involved. And it was only when I turned 11 he decided to get back in touch and reached out to my mum, basically saying that he would like to be involved in my life. She had always been quite open with me and said that should he ever get in touch, that it would be up to me and she would support me kind of whatever I chose to do, whether I did want to see him or didn't. At that point I was just super excited that my dad was back in my life. So straight away I was yeah, want to see him, absolutely. So I met my dad for the first time after quite a few months of my mum and him speaking to make sure he was actually serious about wanting to be present again. And at that point I also found out that I had a younger brother, so that was really great for me as well. Over time I started spending more and more time with my dad. It got to the point in the end where I would spend alternate weekends at my parents'. One weekend I'd be at my mum's, one weekend I'd be at my dad's, and it was pretty kind of normal at the beginning. And it wasn't until I was about 14 that abuse started happening, when one night I had fallen asleep while watching a movie with him in his bedroom, and I woke up to his hands down my trousers. And at that point I was just really, I guess, frozen and just complete and utter shock, had no idea what to do. And it wasn't until I started crying and he realised, okay, she's not actually asleep, that he stopped. And yeah, that was the first time that any of the abuse happened. There were multiple incidents. The first time that he sexually abused me, the next day he was very apologetic, saying that he was a monster and that he never should have done what he did. And it almost became kind of a cycle that he would apologise for what he'd done, but then it would just continue to happen again and again and again. And I think that was part of the manipulation as well. I held so much kind of guilt for the fact that he was saying to his 14-year-old daughter, oh, I'm such a monster, I'm an awful person and things like that. And although I never should have felt guilty that he was feeling those things, I definitely did at the time. And as well, he would do things at one point he stopped taking his HIV medication and told me he didn't deserve to take them. He shouldn't have access to them because of the things that he'd done. And again, it just almost piled on that guilt for me, and I felt like it was my fault that he could potentially be getting sick or even die. And looking back on it now, I can see that the grooming probably was going on a lot longer than I probably realised. Just small things, he was very manipulative in trying to turn me against my mum. A lot of the time he would say things she didn't understand what it was like to be a teenager and that she was strict and overbearing. And then when you pair that with the fact that he was more than happy to give me and give me alcohol freely, as a 14-year-old I was thinking, okay, great, my dad realises I'm not a child, and obviously at 14 I am a child, but as a 14-year-old you kind of want to be treated like a grown-up and you're pushing boundaries and things anyway. To then be given so much freedom, it just definitely added to the grooming. And I realise now, looking back as well, he would tell me that the was to help me sleep and things, because I used to have issues with my sleep, and as an adult I realised it was probably nothing to do with trying to help me sleep. It was so that I would fall asleep so that he could do what he wanted to me, and I would have a very hazy memory of it. Same with the alcohol as well. I remember him giving me a bottle of, and I kind of asked him oh, how much am I allowed to drink? And he was well, you're 14, you're a big girl, you know how much you can handle. And obviously as a 14-year-old you definitely do not know your limits with things like alcohol. So I drank the entire thing, couldn't go into school the next day because I was just so ill and have no memory of what he potentially did that night. This went on for around 6 months or so before my mum discovered text messages on my phone. Just by chance she'd happened to pick up my phone and have a look at it when I'd fallen asleep, and she saw messages from my dad basically apologising for what had happened. And straight away she phoned him and confronted him about everything. And surprisingly, he admitted to everything and agreed to stay in the flat until police came, which he did. I'd gone to, like, my work experience, had no idea that, like, my mum knew or anything, and I was picked up early from my work experience being told, like, you need to come home, but I'm not really kind of knowing why until I got home and saw, like, police cars and things, and at that moment just knew what had happened. He was due to serve 12 years in prison, and that got reduced to 8 years because he pled guilty from the beginning, and then in the end he served 4 of them in prison and the rest out on licence, which is now finished. Yeah, so it was similar to house arrest, but in the UK when you're on licence you can still, like, you don't have to stay on your property, you can go out and do things. You have, like, certain conditions that you have to agree to, so, like, he wouldn't have been able to be in, like, a house unsupervised with under 16-year-olds or, like, stayed overnight where there was someone with children, but he was still free to kind of go about his day-to-day life. And yeah, he lives in a completely different area now. Like, the police aren't allowed to disclose that to me. So I have no idea kind of where he is in the country, and he's also legally changed his name as well. So for anyone that kind of gets to know him now, like, they would have no idea of his past or anything like that unless they kind of knew from before. So it's almost as if he's got his own new life now. And then, as well as the abuse that had been going on, there was also the element that he had HIV, and he was, like, fully aware of it, and he still chose to put his daughter at risk of that. Like, surprisingly, I managed to kind of continue with school, and, like, after he was arrested and everything, like, I still did my exams and then went to uni afterwards. I think part of wanting to do that was that when he was around, alongside, like, trying to make my mum seem like this awful person, he was very much like, oh, you don't need to bother with school and things like that. I think after he was arrested, I think I really kind of wanted to, I guess, prove him otherwise and say, well, actually, no, you don't get to tell me that I don't want to do well in school and finish my exams and things. And after he was arrested and things as well, I didn't really want to speak to therapists or, like, people that were assigned to me, like social workers and things. I think I just focused on school because it was something that I could focus on without having to open up and talk to all these kind of people about what happened to me. I knew that he was HIV, like, from when I first, like, had contact with my dad, and, like, I kind of knew what it was, but I don't think at that age I had kind of a full understanding of the implications of contracting HIV. And my dad had never, like, lied about it or anything. Like, me and my brother both knew that he had it, but it was something that he didn't really like to speak about. I think I almost tried to just completely push it out of my mind because I didn't want to even consider, like, the implications if I had contracted HIV, let alone to have contracted that from my dad. I think that was one of the most kind of stressful things after he was arrested, having to go through, like, the testing and everything, because it was, like, police officers that took me to the hospital to be tested. Yeah, I was definitely very, very relieved to have a negative test result. It did also kind of raise more questions for me afterwards, looking back, because, like, after the court case I realised that all the abuse that happened, he had used protection, and I'd kind of never really even given much thought to that, but it kind of stuck with me because I was like, he is not something that's, like, happened in the heat of the moment and then he's regretted it. It's been meticulously planned, and he knew what he was doing to have that protection there and then know what he was going to do. My relationship with my mum is, like, really good now. I think, like, as I've gone into adulthood, I've understood a lot more what actually happened to me, but as a teenager, like, especially just after he was arrested, I was just very, very angry about what had happened, and I hated the fact that it had come out and that people knew, and I feel awful for it now, but I definitely directed a lot of that anger towards my mum. And now as a mum myself, like, I can't even begin to imagine how kind of heartbreaking that would have been for her to find out that's happened to your child, and then to have them hating you for it, when she was the one person that had protected me through it all. As a teenager, like, I didn't cope the best. I already mentioned that my dad was giving me cannabis and alcohol. After he was arrested, I continued to smoke, like, very regularly, and as I got a bit older, that then progressed into harder drugs, and I was already suffering with depression, and I think that definitely spiraled a lot. I was self-harming on, like, nearly a daily basis, and a few months after my dad was arrested, I tried to end my life. And again, like, I hold a lot of guilt for doing that, because my mum had already been through so much, and then to find me after trying to end my life, I don't know what I would do if I ever found one of my daughters in that position. So my brother was the same as me. He stayed there every other weekend and spent the rest of the time at his mum's. I think he was one of the main reasons that I never told anyone what was going on, because I knew that he didn't have the best relationship with his mum, and I knew that if I was to ever tell anyone, like, what was going on, that it wouldn't obviously just be me that it affected. And I knew that if my dad was arrested, he would then be living with his mum full time, which I knew he didn't want at the time. And so I just kind of thought to myself that if, like, I can deal with this, and, like, I will be okay, and that way he doesn't need to be suffering. But I also think that a lot of that was, again, my dad's manipulation. Like, I have contact, like, with his mum now, and every child and parent goes through, like, times where they're like, oh, I hate my mom. But my dad definitely presented her as this awful mother that was no good for him and things like that, when in reality I really don't think it was like that at all. And I think he knew that it was a way to keep me quiet without physically saying to me, don't tell anyone. So when my dad was arrested, he continued to stay with his mom. I think it did, like, quite negatively impact him as well, because he had obviously known him for his whole life. It's a big thing to suddenly have your parent ripped away from you. Yeah, I'd say we have, like, a good relationship. I think I find it difficult sometimes. Like, I love my brother to bits, like, but he also looks exactly like my dad. So that can be quite difficult sometimes, because sometimes I just look at him and see my dad, which is quite conflicting, because obviously he's not my dad and he's nothing like my dad, but that doesn't stop the, like, negative emotions and things coming in anyway. So I've got 2 little girls. One of them is 3 and the other one's 18 months. I fell pregnant with my first daughter. Like, it was a complete surprise. It wasn't planned at all. When I first, like, found out, I was very conflicted on whether to keep her or not. I was quite young when I had her. I was 19 when I fell pregnant, and I was still, like, studying at university as well. But I did make the decision, obviously, with my partner, to keep her, and that was definitely, like, the best decision that I've ever made. As soon as I found out, like, I was pregnant and was keeping her and everything, I haven't, like, touched any drugs since then. Having my own children, it, like, as soon as I held my eldest daughter, it was like almost like a breakthrough. I just couldn't understand how someone could do that to their baby, and it really pushed me to actually get help for myself and begin, like, having trauma therapy and things, not just for me, but so that I can then be better for them. I started going to trauma therapy and did, like, a course for, like, helping to deal with, like, symptoms after being diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. And after I kind of completed those sessions, I'm now, like, still in therapy, doing dialectal behavioural therapy, which again is just to really kind of help me, like, manage my emotions a lot better, because I've also been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and that's, like, one of the main things for me. Like, my emotions will go from 0 to 100 times a day, so it's just trying to learn how to manage them more effectively, so that I'm very kind of hyper aware that I don't want that to affect my children as well. Even after my dad was arrested, I held on to so much shame and guilt for what had happened. And I guess I would just say to anyone else experiencing similar things that shame and the guilt and all the other negative emotions that come with it, that does not belong to you in the slightest. It belongs to the person that's hurt you. They're not your feelings to hold on to.